to the Cow Report. I'm your host, Shecky Formel, and of course with me is Mr. Green Bay, Fred, the true Stafford, right here, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming to you live.
Howdy doody.
Coming to you live from the old tire factory, Fred.
Is this what this was?
The old doggone tire factory.
Yeah.
Building number 4. Many a tires were run through here, Freddie.
Yes.
Millions of them.
Yes.
Well, as usual, Fred, boy, oh boy, we got a lot to talk about tonight here on this live show. Getting into December now, we're winding down another year.
Yes, sir.
Hanukkah's coming up, Christmas is coming up. I think the Chinese New Year's coming up.
Yes.
Maybe it went past.
Yes.
Our New Year's a week right after Christmas, so it's a busy time of year, Fred.
You bet.
Everybody's running around, the stores are full, everyone's running to and fro, knowledge is increasing, people are buying, selling, marrying, giving in marriage, dying, living.
Yes.
It's always been that way, though, hasn't it?
Right on.
All right, well, Freddie, what's the deal with this jacket here?
Well, you told me to wear it, so I thought you'd like it then.
Between that hat and that jacket, you look like a Christmas tree yourself.
Right.
All right, well, how'd them Packers of yours do over the weekend?
They did all right. They won.
It's about time.
24-10, I guess it was.
It's about time they won. What's that? First time they've been in that many wins since what, 72?
Right.
Yeah, well, okay, all right. Well, Fred, as usual, we got a lot to talk about here. And you know something, Freddie? Remember that NAFTA agreement that
Yes.
those lame ducks came in and passed after
Yes.
they lost the election? And we had over 70 conservatives come into Congress. They didn't get a chance to vote on that lame duck
Right.
thing. It was one of them dirty tricks that Newt Gingrich pulled on the American people as a payback to Clinton. Well, you know, now the facts are starting to roll down the pike exactly what's going on with that thing, Fred.
Yes.
And as you and I both know, we went up to Farm and Fleet the other day, looked around, and what'd you see in there?
Mostly clothing from every country except the United States. There are few things there from the United States.
We found a row of shoes in there that are American, but they're about $100 a pair.
And we found some jeans that were made in the United States.
Yeah.
Oshkosh and another brand there.
Yeah, they're about $12 a pair,
Yeah.
not bad. But other than that, Fred, we saw an awful lot of stuff from China,
Right.
and a lot of stuff from Bangladesh, and Pakistan, and Guatemala, and the Ukraine, and not much from Europe, though. A lot of it was third world stuff.
Well, I think the third world is getting less money for wages, and that's why they make those things there.
Well, Freddie, another big company is biting the dust. One of the icons of the United States. Citing trade treaties, Fruit of the Loom will close 6 U.S. plants.
Yes. I heard that.
A lot of people grew up wearing Fruit of the Loom.
Yes.
Well, Chicago, coming out of Chicago, Fruit of the Loom, the nation's largest underwear maker, said today that it would close 6 domestic plants and cut back operations at 2 others, laying off 3,200 workers, or 12% of its United States workforce. What you are seeing is the cumulative impact of NAFTA and GATT, said Ronald Serini, a company spokesman, referring to 2 trade agreements that have cut down barriers to textile imports. More than 100,000 textile industry jobs have been lost through the first 9 months out of a total of 1.6 million, Fred. 100,000 jobs in this country lost. And these are the kind of jobs where you got single working mothers slaving away, making Levi's and T-shirts and underwear, working to support families. And those jobs are just falling right through our fingers, Fred, into the foreign hands.
Well, that's why I was opposed to GATT and I was opposed to NAFTA. NAFTA, Ford built a plant down there, making 74,000 cars a year. They were supposed to sell 24,000 of them in Mexico. They sold closer to 10,000 there. The rest are coming up here.
Can't afford a car down there on them wages.
No, they can't. Matter of fact, when we heard that man out at Altoona, who was with the AFL-CIO, the state treasurer, he said that they were making, you know, $1 an hour. When they organized them, the guys they organized were killed right in the plant, and the wages of the workers were cut to 50 cents an hour.
Well, Fred, one of the worst places they could do this is down in southeastern United States. A lot of poor people down there to begin with, and this was a good steady job for them. Fruit of the Loom makes t-shirts, socks, underwear. They have 50 plants worldwide and about 38,000 employees, 28,000 of them in the United States. But they're slowly whittling away at that, moving their factories or equipment overseas. Cheaper to make this stuff halfway around the world and ship it back. We've got to protect American jobs, Fred, and that's why we got to buy American first when we can.
That's
and
right.
As you know,
I agree with you.
when we were up there in Farm and Fleet, and it's not just Farm and Fleet, Shopko, it's Walmart, Kmart,
Shopko has an awful lot of stuff made
Frangyway,
in China,
right down the line.
especially shoes.
All these big department stores are competing against each other, so they're all
Yeah.
falling in line.
Pennies also,
Pennies.
Kohl's.
I know, it's not looking good, Fred. China must be cleaning up because this is going on nationwide.
Yonkers and Pangway, two had a lot of stuff.
China must be making a killing out there, Fred.
I know it.
And you know, part of the money that goes into China by their laws in China, part of that money goes directly to the Chinese army. They're directly involved in the economy of China. They get that money so they can keep modernizing. China is now exporting a lot of their weapons of destruction, Fred, around to other communist nations to keep the old fires of the Cold War going there. And as a matter of fact, Fidel Castro was in China just the other day, chumming up to them guys looking for weapons and more money.
Well, he's getting more money now from Russia. Made a new trade deal with them.
Okay, Freddie, well, we're taking calls tonight, and we've got a new number here, 839-6261. And Freddie, don't forget to bundle up out there, because it's going to get cold now, and
Yes.
wind chills are coming in, and people go outside and they start shoveling snow, and then they wonder why they end up in the funeral home with a heart attack,
I know.
because they go out there and they overexert themselves. And I learned today, Fred, that you got to dress in layers. And if you get hot, you take a layer off. If you get cold, you put a layer back on. What I mean by layers is an extra pair of socks, extra pair of pants, extra shirt. And if you get hot, you take one of those, you take a layer off.
Right.
All right. I'm glad we got that layer situation straightened out. Well, Fred, we better take a call here, because this is the call report.
You got any calls?
Well, I thought I had something beeping there. It kind of looks like a call. We'll see. It's kind of hard to tell, but is there anybody there?
Sure it is. It's a common man.
Oh,
Wow.
common man.
Hello there, Randy.
How you doing, Fred?
We haven't heard from you for months. We didn't know you were still alive. I heard rumors.
Oh, I'm still alive. That's one of the reasons I figured maybe I'd better call in, just in case. Some people thought I was dead or something.
Aren't you doing your show anymore?
Huh?
Aren't you doing your show anymore?
Well, I'm sort of doing it. What we're doing here right now is kind of, the last one I made here is kind of like an updated version of an old one there. It was kind of, and then I don't know the next one. I don't know what we're going to do with that one, but try and do something with it anyway. But see, the problem is good old Roy and his camera problems there. We're trying to get that all straightened out a little bit in the meantime.
Well, you can't rely on Roy.
But I had a couple of,
Roy Rogers Hoff is a busy man.
yeah, I know, but
He's got many irons in the fire.
yeah, something like that, including his own. Matter of fact, his show got kind of cut off short there. I wonder how he feels about that little deal. But anyway,
So what do you want? What do you got? What question you got for the two experts up here tonight?
well, I don't know.
not including me.
questions, but for other things here, I got a few other bits of news here. First, like belching of the rumors and other things like that. Probably, people are wondering, well, why haven't I, like you said, why haven't I been making new shows? And I'll tell you, there were some people, I know you guys weren't there, there were some people at last year's annual meeting who didn't believe that I had a phobia with elevators, even though I was there, see?
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Is that I went
See what you're saying there.
there and I braved it out because I wanted to go there anyway to see what was going on and what happened and all that. But I'll tell you, the whole time I was there, I was shaking like a leaf. By the time I got out of there, I could barely drive the car home,
All you got to do is close your eyes, hold your nose, take a deep breath, and just push the button and go up to the 4th floor. Either that or walk up the 4th floor. It's only 4 flights.
Well, I thought about the stairway. I thought about that, although I'm not as good at stairways as I used to be either. As a matter of fact, I used to live in an upstairs place before I moved in where I am now, and that was one of the reasons why I moved out, because I was, I got a little knee problem there, so that's the same deal. So.
Well, another thing you can do is you can start drinking Flavin Pop. It's the best tonic on the market.
Oh, that you probably won't survive the first bottle.
Flavin Pop, right here. Best tonic on the market.
That's supposed to be the ultimate cure-all, I suppose, huh?
Yeah, Flavin Pop cures anything.
Yeah. No, other things here, I don't know. I don't know. There's a few other, I don't like I say, there was a few other, I can't even think or remember whatever I was going to say now, but some of it,
I heard they're canceling Sybil Shepherd.
huh?
All right, Freddie. You know, Fred, the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan,
Yes?
he's one of the biggest black racists out there in the country right now, stirring
Yes.
up hatred amongst black people against whites and Jews,
Mm-hmm.
calling for armed rebellion, kill Whitey, kill the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had their Million-Man March. While Louis Farrakhan was expounding his brand of hatred to about 300,000 people, they tried to sue. They were going to sue because the park police wouldn't jack their figure up to 1 million so that they could claim 1 million came to their Million-Man March. But anyway, during the Nation of Islam's supposedly Million-Man March, there was a Black Holocaust nationhood conference held at 2 Washington, D.C. high schools for 2 days. This is coming from the Anti-Defamation League now.
Yes.
And I read this over, and they're right on target with this because I watched some of this just filth and black poison racism against white people. Fred, this was on C-SPAN
Yes.
for hours. Now, there used to be a time in this country when you'd say things like that, you could be charged with inciting to riot or disorderly conduct or something. But this guy was almost calling for the out-and-out murder of people and saying things, well, anyway. The conference represented a segment of Farrakhan's following that holds tightly to the minister's racist teachings. And in the views of these militant blacks are at war with American society and vice versa. Accordingly, many habitually use the rhetoric of violence and hate, but like Minister Farrakhan, they make no effort to occasionally moderate their expressions. The relationship between this faction and Minister Farrakhan is fluid, and the faction I'm talking about is the 600 or 1,000 that showed up at this hate conference. And that was Khalid Abdul Muhammad. He's the one that was shot. Remember, he was giving a hate speech somewhere in Ohio or somewhere, and another black came up and shot him several times in the legs. But, I mean, that guy would look right into the camera and tell the cameraman he's going to kill him because he's white. I mean, that guy is a nutcase, is Khalid Abdul Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
He's even more of a racist than Louis Farrakhan is. But so he had his conference, and they avow fervent loyalty to him, while he plays a subtle game of sometimes embracing at other times ignoring them. Over the weekend, March co-organizer Benjamin Chavis, who killed a man.
He was also
Several
the head of NAACP.
He's the one that had to pay off several $100,000 to keep some of his prostitutes quiet that he was paying off on the side, with NAACP money, I might add. Well, he disavowed any connection between the march and the Black Holocaust Conference, but conference director Malik Zulu Shabazz said, "We are right in line and in tune with the Million Man March leadership." Shabazz also reportedly stated, Louis Farrakhan in Houston in June was informed of the conference. We asked him whether it would be okay to have it on the weekend of the Million Man March, and he approved us. As for Farrakhan himself, he has made no public statement on the matter. So what this guy is doing, Fred, is this Khalid Abdul Muhammad. They've kind of pushed him out in front of Farrakhan now, so Farrakhan can appear to be more conservative. But they're both avowed racists and haters of the white race. And they call for a separate black nation. They also call for a civil war against whites and Jews. But this Muhammad now stepped out in front, and he's really spitting out the poison. And I don't know what's going on out there, Fred. It seems to me what he's doing is it's beyond the freedom of speech. This guy is inciting black people to go out and shoot whites randomly with his kind of rhetoric. I can just see those guys getting all pumped up and then going out and taking pot shots at white people.
Mm-hmm.
Because this guy really is a fervent racist. Anyway, speakers at the conference, a roster of bigots. This comes from the ADL fact-finding report. The Other Face of Farrakhan, the name of it. Just got it in the mail today. A roster of bigots. Speakers at the conference included several pro-Farrakhan black figures known for advocating a variety of anti-white, anti-Asian, anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic, and homophobic views. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, an aide to Farrakhan who has repeatedly expressed virulent bigotry. Farrakhan dismissed him in '94 as his national spokesman after Muhammad's notoriously hate-filled speech at New Jersey's Keene College, but later reinstated him as a minister in the Nation of Islam. Another speaker was Quanell X, a 24-year-old from Houston whose original name is Quanell Evans, identified by the Chicago Tribune as Nation of Islam National Youth Minister. He had earlier declared in an interview, "I say to Jewish America, get ready, knuckle up, put your boots on, because we're ready and the war is going down." So what we have is young blacks, angry young blacks, that are arming themselves, Fred, to the teeth. Several years ago, the intelligence report said that the Nation of Islam had 10,000 heavily armed black soldiers in Chicago, one city. It spilled into Milwaukee. We got McGee up there with his brand of Black Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
He's calling for armed rebellion. Okay, another guy, Steve Coakley, a former Chicago mayoral aide who has accused Jewish doctors of deliberately injecting black children with the AIDS virus. Do you believe that stuff, Fred?
No.
There used to be rumors going around New York City that there was a certain soft drink on the market that poisoned only black people. Now, how does a soft drink know when it gets into somebody's stomach that you're black or white? Is a soft drink that intelligent that it can just poison black people? That was one of the stupid rumors. Here's another one, injecting black children with the AIDS virus. Another speaker at their conference was Leonard Jeffries, former head of the Black Studies Department at City College of New York. Jeffries has taught that blacks, he calls them the sun people, are by nature humanistic and communal, while whites, the ice people, are harsh, unfeeling oppressors of blacks. He's also asserted that rich Jews controlled the slave trade. Well, they might have controlled the slave trade, but it was black chieftains that sold their own black people into slavery.
That's right.
They gathered them from the interiors of Africa and brought them to the coast and sold them to the slave traders at the ships waiting. Tony Martin, a professor of Africana studies at Wesley College, who has taught that Jews dominated the slave trade and assigned his classes to read The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, a Nation of Islam book that purports to prove this charge. And of course, Malik Zulu Shabazz, organizer of the conference and leader of its sponsoring group, Unity Nation. Shabazz is a former Howard University student activist, well known for having led the audience in an anti-Semitic call and response routine as a warm-up for Khalid Muhammad's speech at Howard University, February of '94. Okay, Fred, so there's just a little preview, and there's a little bit more here about Khalid Muhammad. Now, you've seen this guy on TV, haven't you? Wears a bow tie, his head shaved.
Probably.
He's a very articulate and charismatic speaker. He gets the crowd up to their feet, yelling and very excited. And it's almost like Hitler, Fred, except this guy's a black guy doing it. It's scary. So Khalid Muhammad, the various speeches throughout the conference functioned as a crescendo to the appearance of the final speaker, Khalid Abdul Muhammad. Speaking before a cheering audience, Quanell X, Nation of Islam National Youth Minister, reportedly proclaimed to the crowd, "Are 6 million lives worth more than 150 million black lives? All those Jews can go straight to hell." Dozens in the hall stood and cheered. Introducing Khalid Muhammad, conference organizer Malik Shabazz said, "We want to bring on the National Assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We want to bring on a man who gives the white man nightmares. We want to bring on a man who makes the Jews pee in their pants at night." Addressing the assembly after receiving a thunderous welcome ovation from the audience, Muhammad made clear that he has not moderated his anti-white, anti-Jewish, and anti-Catholic views. "We want to try the white man today," he said. "We want to hold court on this devil today. We will find this cracker guilty beyond any reasonable doubt with no recommendation for mercy. We want to keep this cracker on death row with no possibility for a stay of execution." Muhammad's attacks on Pope John Paul II and Catholicism were greeted with laughter and applause. He said, "Elijah Muhammad taught that the Pope of Rome is the Antichrist." Referring to the Pope's recent trip to Africa, Muhammad said, "It makes me sick to my stomach to see black people running over each other just to kiss this cracker." "Who in the hell is the Pope of Rome?" Muhammad answered. "He's an imposter. He's an idol. He's a false icon that must be torn down." Then he goes on, referring to the Jews, Muhammad said, "The nerve of them to get angry with him, O.J. Simpson attorney Johnny Cochran, because he paralleled Mark Fuhrman with Adolf Hitler. Look at it, so-called Jew. Look at it, imposter Jew. Somebody must call you what you are. Somebody must look you in your cold, lying blue eyes and pull the cover off of you today. I don't give a damn about you, and I will give you hell from the cradle to the grave." He also referred to the nation's leading black institution of higher learning as Coward University, instead of Howard University, I guess. So anyway, Fred, we're dealing with some virulent racists out there, Fred.
Yes.
Not only white, but black. We're in perilous times, Fred.
We certainly are. More ways than one.
All right, let's take another call, Fred, and we're going to go right to that article you have there on Oklahoma City,
Right.
to the bombing. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi. I really liked the packed auction, or the packed grand opening, but I didn't see you there. The grand opening, in fact, I didn't see you there. It was pretty good.
The public access grand opening?
Yeah,
Yeah, I had to work.
but it was good. They had good entertainment.
They did? Live band or what?
No, they had like Beck Bauer and some grade school kids first, and then I don't know this other guitarist. I can't think of his name. Then they had Innocent Man.
Yeah, it's quite a place they got here now. It's actually like a TV studio.
Yeah.
You know, before we had to share quarters down there with a funeral parlor and a taco stand and books and all that other stuff. Now this is just a bona fide television studio, Fred.
Yes.
You know, as a matter of fact, this is almost nicer than Channel 13. Channel 13 comes down here and sees this, they're going to have to remodel.
Yeah.
You know it?
Yeah.
So what's your take on all this here stuff, and what do you think about this sending 50,000 American boys and girls over to that hellhole called Bosnia?
I don't think so. It's not that good.
When the body bags come back, what are you going to think then?
They did good for the country then.
See, this isn't no cakewalk like Somalia.
Oh,
There's some battle-hardened criminals over there, some war criminals. Some of them have killed 50, 75, 100 people. They're guerrillas. They've been doing this now for over 4 years. They know the lay of the land. They're dug in. They've got their caves dug. They've got their, what do they say, 3 million booby traps and mines over there, Fred?
More than that.
3 different warring factions that are going to, that 60,000 troops are going to try and keep separate. But why, Fred? And I asked this, Fred. Europe, the United States of Europe, the economic union over there, 11 or 12 or 13 of the most powerful nations in the world have joined together, Fred. And they're sending, the whole 12 or 13 of them are sending a measly 40,000 troops, or 35,000. The United States has got to kick in 25,000. And that's a European problem, Fred. Now what's going on?
No, that's a good question.
And what do you think about it, caller?
I think it's good, but not good.
Have you got any friends in the military?
No.
Any children old enough to be in the military?
Nope. I don't have any.
All right, well, why don't you go get some? What's wrong with you? So what else did you want to ask tonight?
I like Fred's jacket. I'm lucky enough he's not wearing a Viking jacket.
Well, Fred's a Packer fan. I'm a Viking fan. They both won. I root for the Packers when they're not playing the Vikings. And I'm sure Fred does the same for me.
Yeah.
But doesn't Fred look cute there in his Packers coat there? Finally, after all these years, he finally got with it, and he's a bona fide Packers fan. Of course, you've been a Packers fan for a while, haven't you, Fred?
His hat.
Quite a few years.
What's on his hat?
Go, Pat, go.
Go, Pat, go.
That's Pat Buchanan.
All right, okay. Well, thanks a lot, caller. Did you have any final words or questions?
Nope. I just think the show's okay. The show's really good, and it's good at the studio.
Okay, well, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. Good night.
Now here we have a number of things in this prior knowledge of the Oklahoma City bombing. Did federal agents have prior knowledge? Conspicuous absence of ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, personnel at the Murrah Building on April 19th. An official of the ATF explanation: whereabouts of office personnel on the 19th contains a demonstrable lie. Missions by ATF personnel at the bomb scene that they had been tipped off in advance. Conflicting stories by ATF officials whether or not they were expecting trouble on April 19th. Admissions by the sources connected to the Oklahoma FBI office that they had been tipped off prior to the investigation. Admissions by the personnel of the Oklahoma Fire Department that they had been notified of the FBI of an impending bomb threat, attack, I should say. Witness accounts of police bomb squads outside the Murrah Building on an hour before the blast. A U.S. Marshal Service memorandum warning of an impending major bomb threat. An informant for the U.S. Department of Justice who provided a very accurate and specific advance warning of an impending bomb attack. Judge of the Oklahoma City, a federal judge, told of a heightened security concerns immediately before the bombing. A federal grand juror who was discharged, the federal prosecutors were covering up the identities of additional suspects in the crime.
Okay, well, wait a minute there, Fred. You read off about 20, 30 things there. You're overwhelming the population out there with all this knowledge.
Well, just like you did
Now
before,
you think about it.
we're doing the same thing.
Well, you think about it though, Fred. Think about this. They had cameras facing that building. They had cameras for weeks ahead of that. Why don't they get the tape from the weeks before that when they supposedly saw these guys walking around with military uniforms on, casing the joint, and look back at those old videos? They had cameras perched up from all different kinds of angles as security to watch that building. So they need to get a hold of them. They probably already do have a hold of them, Fred. And we never know if that'll come out in the court case or not, but it still appears, Fred, after all the thousands and hundreds of thousands of words and pages of information and the newscasts and everything, and it still looks like it's only the work of a couple of people. Whether they're paid informants or whatever, they did a dastardly deed, and they're probably going to fry for it. And you can't pin it on a militia movement, or you can't pin it on Khalid Muhammad or Louis Farrakhan. It was the work of a couple of people that just spun off the deep end and made a fertilizer bomb and used it. And it was very effective for scaring the people of this country.
Yes, and getting perhaps through the what the president wanted in the law on the crime bill.
I don't know if that's what they were thinking about when they blew it up, Fred, that the president would act to take away some of law-abiding Americans' civil rights.
And here's a fellow named Heidelberg, who was a rancher, accused the federal government of hampering grand jury investigation.
Okay, well, we better take a call there, Fred, while they're chewing on all that vital information there. And, you know, there's a cottage industry of this Oklahoma City deal now, Fred. There's a lot of people sprung up selling souvenirs, and videotapes, and books, and radio programs, and talk shows, and a lot of money being made off the misery of 168 families that lost loved ones. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question for the older man on the left there.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, you say you're a Pat Buchanan fan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What does Pat Buchanan do, or who is he?
Well, Pat Buchanan was on TV and part of a panel that used to answer questions and ask questions of people who also appeared on the panel.
Kind of like Pat Sajak then, or?
He's on CNN. He was on Crossfire, if you remember that show.
Oh, yeah, that's like Criss Crass Crotch.
Yeah, something of that nature. But also he was a reporter. He's written books. He was on he was on another talk show too, Fred.
Isn't he for abortion?
No, he opposes abortion.
Oh, he does?
Yes.
Okay. So he opposes abortion, and then he turns the letters on that game show? Says he talks on game shows and stuff?
I never saw him on a game show. Maybe he does. I don't know.
Okay, because I thought it was the guy. Oh, no, that's Pat Sajak. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I must have the wrong guy.
Right.
Maybe you got the wrong show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is Wheel of Fortune, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you then.
All right. Good night. Okay, Freddie. Now, getting back to our the last two paragraphs of the ADL, Anti-Defamation League's expose on Louis Farrakhan and company. A number of racist, anti-Semitic, and extremist materials were distributed at this conference that we talked about earlier. Among these were Blacks and Jews News, a newsletter produced by the Nation of Islam's Historic Research Department that charges that the Jewish opinion of blacks is parallel to Hitler's. The periodical promotes and defends the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. The Nation of Islam book that fabricates and distorts historical fact for the purpose of demonizing Jews as a group. Items for sale included a collection of speeches by Louis Farrakhan, videotapes of news programs that featured Farrakhan discussing the upcoming Million Man March, Message to the Black Man in America, a book by the late Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad, a videotape of Khalid Muhammad's appearance on the Phil Donahue Show, and the audio tapes of Steve Coakley's speeches. vendors sold Million Man March t-shirts, buttons, and other paraphernalia. The extremism of the Black Holocaust Nationhood Conference contrasted sharply with the broad-based Million Man March, which was intended to expand Farrakhan's influence beyond his traditional constituency. The march included large numbers who came not to pay homage to Farrakhan, but to embrace the march's message of atonement and responsibility, as well as to demonstrate
Yes?
solidarity with their black brothers.
Yes.
I thought you said you had those pages checked ahead of time.
I have them checked here, and I'm looking for another article, and maybe it's in this one that I...
I thought we were going to give up on that when we left the library.
What do you
All
mean?
this page flipping. All right, nevertheless, the crowd that assembled at the Black Holocaust Conference is, for better or worse, part of Minister Farrakhan's retinue. There is no evidence that he wishes to disown them. Neither during nor after the conference did he criticize the gathering or the hate-filled rantings of its speakers, some of whom were Nation of Islam officials. In addition, Farrakhan's quiet promotion of Khalid Muhammad to the status of a Nation of Islam minister after having earlier demoted him plainly indicates that he regards these extremists as an integral part of the Farrakhan family. And of course, Fred, stirring up that hatred and stuff generates money too.
Yes.
People buy the propaganda, they buy the videos, and it's a kind of a cottage industry, Fred. Money's made. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think you're right.
Okay, what if a white extremist, what if a white supremacist called for a march on Washington? If this happened, no matter what the cause, no matter how legitimate the issue, no one could ignore the fact that a hate monger was the driving force behind the march. The same is true of the Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Million Man March. We appreciate the need of the African American to come together in a march on Washington. The problems that plague the African American community are severe and must be addressed. We support the urgent need to correct these problems. We know that the vast majority of the participants in the march will not subscribe to the anti-Semitism and racism of the march's leader. Minister Farrakhan not only subscribes to these hatreds, he promotes them aggressively and repeatedly. Unfortunately, this march will be the largest event led by an anti-Semite in recent American history, and that cannot be ignored. And that's signed by David Strassler, National Chairman, and Abraham Foxman, National Director, Anti-Defamation League. So you know, Fred, they thought after World War II, with Adolf Hitler extinguished and Nazism put out of business, that things would change, but here, 50 years later, we got a black racist that hates Jews rising up. Things don't change, Fred. The more they change, the more they're the same. So what do you got there, Freddie, before we take another hot call?
More soldiers saying no. First of all, we had Michael New refuse to wear the UN blue, has inspired other members of the U.S. military to reflect upon their moral and patriotic obligations. As New prepares for an early January court-martial, 3 other U.S. soldiers, all of them Army medics, have taken similar stands against the adulteration of their oath of service to the U.S. Constitution. And they were Sergeant First Class Edward Razor, an instructor of special warfare medics at the JFK Special Warfare Center and School of Fort Bragg, Minnesota, announced he would not exchange his green beret for a blue beret.
What's that guy's name?
Edward Razor.
Are you there, caller?
Hello, may I speak to Mr. or Mrs. Johnson, please? This is Electrolog, trying to... about the vacuum cleaners.
A what?
Shit.
He said somebody wanted to buy some vacuum cleaners, Fred.
Yeah.
All right, we'll let that slide there.
And,
the number is 839-6261, Fred.
and we had the other sergeants were Sergeant First Class Shane Chrysler and Scott Sudweeks.
Okay, well, what's all that boil down to, Fred? I'm not
Well, they
too
don't
interested in their
want to go to Bosnia in the blue helmet and
Okay,
other
Clinton
things.
solved that problem now. He's going to send bona fide American troops over there, 50,000 of them.
I know that, and I disagree with his
UN,
doing
as
that.
a matter of
I
fact-
noticed that he didn't go to Vietnam when he was supposed to go, and he went to Soviet Russia. After going to Soviet Russia, came back to England, and he was one of those who created a war protest in England.
Okay, Fred, now the United Nations voted, and they decided that December 31st was the last day that the United Nations will be in Bosnia. So somebody had to fill the vacuum. So NATO comes in and says, well, we'll do it, but we're going to use mostly American boys to do it, to do the filling, to fill that vacuum.
Yes.
Now there's estimates that it could be upwards of 50,000 get bogged down in there before any of them start coming back.
It's ironic that we're foolish enough to go over there.
You know,
First of all, we don't have any reason to go over there. It's not our responsibility. If it's anybody's responsibility, it's Europe's responsibility.
that's
And the
right.
ones who've been causing the problems are the Serbs, who are the former communists,
And they're supplied with their arms by the
and
Russians.
supplied by the Russians and whatnot.
And now Russian troops are going to be in there in Bosnia. They said they're going to send a contingency in there, but they're not going to be under no United Nations or NATO. They want to do what they want to do in there.
Right.
So they're
Probably
gonna,
help out the Serbs.
they're going to end up guarding some of the Serb enclaves there. Serb. But yeah, the Slobodan Milosevic wanted to create a greater Serbia, Fred. He wanted to pull all the Serbian peoples together in one greater Serbia, kind of like Braz Tito did after World War II, when he defeated the Nazis in former Yugoslavia. Well, you know, when that broke up, then
The funny thing about that, he didn't start the fight until right at the end. He came into the battle. He let the other Serbs who were there carry the battle to the Germans.
Tito took all those different diversified, the Croatians, the Muslims, and Serbs, and he put them together in a patchwork and called it Yugoslavia and held it together for 45 years, and then it disintegrated after his death into what we see now, ethnic bloodshed. 250,000 people dead, Fred. War crimes. And I said right on this show months ago, I said, Fred, way before they ever talked about a peace treaty in Ohio, when they brought over those guys, and they signed that peace treaty. I said to you on this show, Fred, that they're going to cut a deal to let those war criminals off.
They did.
They did. I said it before they did it, because that's how Clinton deals. He says, you kill 500,000 people or 200,000, no problem. We got to have a peace treaty.
Hmm.
We'll make sure that you don't go to no war crimes tribunal. You sign this peace treaty, and we'll just forget about those 2,000 people you just killed a few weeks ago and buried them with bulldozers. That's the way they did it, Fred. That's how they cut their deal for that peace treaty.
There was a military convergence accelerates. Russian and U.S. troops trained together at Fort Riley, Kansas. A Russian military official was destroying an American nuclear missile silo. And that's Russian Defense Minister Pavel Grabek detonated a charge which demolished a Minuteman missile site 65 miles from Kansas City.
Okay. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
I just tuned into your program here. I didn't catch the whole thing you've been talking about. But I do have one question. How is it that we can pour out the millions necessary to support those boys going over to Bosnia, and we haven't got the money to fund some of the programs that are so vital to people here in this country?
That's a very, very good question. As an example, so far in Haiti, the United States has spent over $2 billion since Clinton propped up that communist in power down there. And he started right back in with his killing, talking about necklacing again, and now he's talking about not stepping down. We propped up a dictator, a communist dictator, one of the first times in the history of this country that we actually put a communist in power. We fought the Cold War for years trying to get him out of power. Clinton comes along and puts one in. Well, okay, $2 billion down the tube. The place is still a disaster. That $2 billion could have been better served spent on humanitarian stuff, Fred.
Yeah.
We could have went over there and built thousands of new homes for that $2 billion. Instead, we got military bogged down there. Now, we want to take another faction of our military and we want to bog them down in Bosnia.
What was the name of the man that was put in, a former Catholic priest who was defrocked by his order?
Aristide.
Yeah, Aristide. That was
Aristide.
Salesian missions there defrocked this man.
So anyway, you're very astute and you're very right, caller. We don't have the money.
Well, I've got a little view here. I'm not a great prophet or anything, but it seems to me that some of the people that so vitally need the funding for support for health care and other things in this country, if we think we've got problems with the crime rate now, let's wait till we chop the funding off of some of these people that really need it. What are they going to do? They're going to survive one way or another. People are going to come up missing some things, and people are going to get, they're going to turn to other than moral means for their support. And I don't know if we could really blame them. People got to survive.
Well, Charles Lindbergh tried to keep us out of World War II. He went around the country. He was a famous aviator in this country. He went around the country saying, stay out of that European war, stay out of there. We don't want to get bogged down. We ended up getting there and losing, close to 500,000 men during World War II, Fred?
Yes.
Before the whole thing was over. Then a couple years later, we got into Korea. Then we got into Vietnam. Now we got into a few scrapes down there in Panama and Grenada, and then we got in the big one over there, Somalia, and the big one in the Persian Gulf. But now we just don't seem to learn. But this has been a presidential policy now for several generations. And Clinton is hurting. He's been hurting in the polls ever since he got in office. Now he's saying, and he's kind of letting the cat out of the bag, he's saying, his advisors are saying we can get in and get out of there within a year. What happens a year from now? 1996, you got elections in November, just a little under a year. He's going to gear this thing up and not time this so that just a few weeks or a few months before the 96 elections, he's going to bring the American boys home. They're going to be marching in parades, and Clinton's going to get reelected. At least that's the scenario. Now, George Bush tried the same thing, but he didn't time that Persian Gulf War just right. He timed it too early. And so people turned on him, and his ratings went from 80-some% down to 30. Well, Clinton's right now, his advisors are saying if you do it right now, we can get in, we can get out of there, we can come back as heroes, and you'll be reelected to another 4 years. At least that's what they're banking on. And I guarantee you, Bill Clinton does not care if there's an American boy or girl killed over there. He walked over dead bodies in Chechnya to go over there and suck up to what's his name? Yeltsin, just a few months ago. The Russian army was slaughtering men, women, and children in Chechnya. Clinton flew right over that area, right to Moscow to hobnob with Yeltsin. And he'll walk over some American boys and girls' graves to get reelected.
I just got one quick comment, then I'll leave here. I think as citizens of this country, I think we've kind of lost the knack of asking questions. We just kind of let the politicians run the show, and we sit back, and I don't know, I think we need to be asking more questions today. That's all I got. Thanks.
Okay, well, Fred, that caller is right, though, about, you're old enough now, Fred, you'd had a few medical problems here. Is your Medicaid, is it sufficient?
No.
Is your Social Security sufficient to keep your head above water?
Well.
Just barely, right?
Yeah.
You're just on the borderline there. Okay, well, there's this big budget battle that the Republicans are fighting against the Democrats, and they shut down Washington for a week there not too long ago, and then it ended up costing $700 million for the shutdown because they had to pay for all those people to be on vacation. Well, here's the facts now coming out, Fred, on this, and it's much ado about nothing here. Fred, this big budget battle is over only $41 billion difference. And you know what? It's the Republicans' plan for the year 2002 and the Democratic plan for the year 2002. There's only $41 billion difference. And here's how it comes down. In 1995, estimated revenues to the United States government are $1.36 billion, or trillion, $1.36 trillion. Under the Republican plan for the year 2002, it goes up to $1.86 billion. Not a decrease, not a tax cut. It's actually going to be over $500 billion more than it is now. That's the Republican budget. The Democratic budget is $1.9 trillion. There's only $41 billion difference, but both of those budgets push the debt up in the year 2002, push up the revenue coming in another $500 billion. It's amazing, Fred. Republicans are talking about changing the tax system, but they're not talking about cutting your taxes. Also, please note carefully, despite claims that the budget will be balanced in the year 2002, the Republican margin for error is only $4 billion and relies heavily on continued theft from the Social Security Trust Fund. And as we know, Fred, if you went to Washington right now and opened the Social Security Trust Fund,
There's nothing in there.
except what?
IOUs.
Cobwebs, IOUs, and a few sickly moths that are starving to death because they got nothing to eat. That's what's left in the Social Security Trust Fund. And what's going to happen when the 70 million baby boomers hit that retirement age? Who's going to foot the bill for them? They're not going to be paying into Social Security. They're going to want to start drawing out of it. Who's going to cover them? 70 million of them, Fred. I'm one of them. Who's going to foot it? Who's going to pay it?
Well, it's going
The
to
whole thing's going to collapse.
We're going to have to get out there and make some money there, Chuck.
Okay, Fred, just before you read that, we're going to take another call. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Didn't you run for politician or something?
Who, Fred?
No, you. That.
Yeah, Fred ran for city council once, didn't you, Fred?
I did, but you also ran for Congress last year. The
Oh, yeah,
third
oh, yeah.
district.
That's what I was talking about, that you were running for Congress.
Oops, turn down your radio there. Yeah, that was my, he's a distant relative.
Yeah, didn't you get caught for smoking pot or something?
Who? Fred?
No.
What?
He wants to know if you were smoking pot.
Never.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
So what do you got there?
Now, behind Dole's double take, Bob Dole can't quite get his story straight with respect to the Log Cabin Club, an organization for homosexual Republicans. Earlier this year, Dole announced that he was returning a small campaign donation from the Log Cabin Club, which he insisted had been accepted by mistake. By October, however, Dole reversed himself and insisted he was keeping the check as a matter of principle.
I know, Fred, we've talked about that on the show before. You know, that's amazing. Okay, caller, are you on the air?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, go ahead.
I got a question here for you. Did you guys see the Jay Leno show, let me see, a couple nights ago? Howard Stern was on there?
No.
You didn't see that, huh? Well, do you know who Howard Stern is, don't you?
Yes.
Well, he came out on stage, and he had two women with him that were in bikinis. And, well, the two ladies laid on Howard Stern's lap, and he was, like, playing with their butt. He was, like, playing the bongos. And Jay Leno he walked off his own stage. Now, I personally like Leno. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well, it's just part of the vast wasteland out there they call TV. And they're always constantly looking for the ratings. And, you know, no longer is it just 3 or 4 major networks. But, you know, if people don't like this show, they got, just in this area, they got 40-some other channels to turn to.
Yeah.
So they got to keep you glued to the set, so they bring on somebody like him that can boost the ratings. And you know, Leno's in a ratings war with Letterman, but maybe there's even something that Leno can't swallow, and he had to walk off his own show.
Yeah.
But you know, Oprah Winfrey, she's starting to take a stand, and she's trying to be not so controversial because she knows that it affects people out there watching, and it affects their thinking and how they act and how they function in society. And so she's toned down her show, and she's going more for quality instead of quantity of ratings. And maybe Leno needs to go in that direction too, and same with David Letterman, but I doubt it.
Yeah. I was going to ask you another question now. What do you think about Bill Clinton anyway? Do you want him to be president again or what?
I'll let Fred field this one. He says he doesn't get to talk enough on the show. Go ahead, Fred.
No, I hope he doesn't get reelected.
You don't, huh?
No.
Yeah, well, either do I, so that's one good thing, Fred.
But I'm going to tell you something, though.
What's that?
The Democrats are closing in on Newt.
Yeah,
And either the Republicans bring the hammer down on this Whitewater stuff
yeah.
and call in the chips and get out the indictments, or Bill Clinton will be the president again for another 4 years, and Whitewater will just be a fairy tale from the past.
Right. I think he'll get convicted on that Whitewater thing there.
Well, they've got the goods there, but some of these people like D'Amato and them, they're getting a little nervous. I mean, they've had death threats, and D'Amato had a mysterious heart attack, and they exposed the fact that he was seeing a woman secretly after he got a divorce, or
Right.
during a divorce, and so they're trying to pull down. There's a big struggle going on there. It's not just issues like bills like the economy stuff. There's a social struggle going on in Washington, and you've got some hardcore conservatives, you've got some liberals, you've got the homosexual lobby, and I mean, these people are fighting tooth and nail for control of this country.
Yeah.
And so it's by no means over, but they're starting to close in on Newt now on some of this campaign financing, and we have some people right here in Wisconsin that gave some big money to GOPAC.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course the Democrats do it too. They're just as dirty. But we're going to see how this is going to play out. It's going to be knockdown, drag out right down to the last round, and it's going to be Frazier and Ollie all the way, Fred. It's going to be a
Right.
slugfest right to the end there, and we'll see who the victor is in November of '96. But we got to go now. We want to remind people. We still got about 2 minutes, Fred, but we've got to get this in about the deadlines on taking out your papers
Go
and
ahead.
running for local office. There was a time just a few years ago where people were fighting just tooth and nail in the trenches there to get on these boards and councils, and now they have to put ads in the paper begging for people to get on the senior citizens board, and they're begging, they're writing articles about nobody running for school board, and there's 3 or 4 seats open on the city council, and there's half a dozen seats open on the county board. People aren't running like they used to, Fred. We'd like to encourage you, you still got till 5 o'clock tomorrow. Not 5:01 or not 5:00, about 4:59 tomorrow. You can still take out your papers. You only got to get, 30 signatures, most of those seats, Fred? Get out there and run. If you want to be involved in local politics, then you gotta run for office. Because somebody's going to run, so might as well be you. And if they can't get anyone to run, then they'll appoint somebody that you might not like in there. And that's why I encourage you, Fred, to run for mayor.
I'm
Run
not
for mayor
running.
light, Fred.
I'm not running. But,
Fred for mayor, I can see it now.
Yeah. I see where the New York insiders of the Planned Parenthood FA staff picked the Big Apple, their Big Apple favorites for the evening out.
Okay,
Girls'
Fred.
night out,
Okay, Fred,
lesbian style.
We're got to say
request
goodbye,
day,
Fred.
few
We got to say
options.
goodbye, Fred. Okay.
Yeah.
Say goodbye,
Ruby
Fred.
fruits.
Say goodbye, Fred. It's time to go.
Yeah.
Say goodbye. We'll see you.
So long.
We'll see you next week, right here on the Cow Report. And Fred, don't you have a show coming up? When
Yes.
is it? What,
Next Tuesday, the 10th,
what time?
at 9 o'clock.
All right. We'll see you next week, right here on the Old Cow Report. Adios. That was a quick hour, Fred.
And your approval is guaranteed. Our offer is for...
Welcome once again to this edition of the Cow Report, and of course, I'm your host, Shecky Formel, on this December 11th, 1995, and boy, oh boy, is it a cold evening out there tonight, and we're glad you're tuning in tonight. Of course, there's no good football game on, so you should just stay tuned tonight, because boy, oh boy, have we got a lot to talk about. And of course, as usual, my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred the True Stafford, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Now, Fred, we didn't know if you were going to make it tonight. We heard rumors that you were at a wake, and we didn't know if it was yours or somebody else's.
I was at a wake.
Well, I guess it wasn't yours, because you're here.
Duke Knopf was waked at Fox. We'll be buried at 11 o'clock Mass at St. Olaf's tomorrow. He was the Grand Knight of the John F. K. Council of the Knights of Columbus.
Locally or?
Locally.
JFK chapter, right?
That was John F. Kennedy's chapter.
Uh-huh. And he was the, so what's going to happen now?
Well, they have to have a new one take its place, which we will do tomorrow night.
Having an emergency meeting then, huh?
Well, we're having a regular meeting, and I think Vic Groswald will take it over again.
Well, Freddie, since we were on last, they're inching ever so closely to sending in that 25,000 troops into harm's way over there in the former Yugoslavian republics of Bosnia-Herzegovina. And how you feel about that tonight as it gets closer?
I'm not too happy about it, to be very frank with you. I oppose the move. I have friends that come from Croatia, and they are not any too happy about going over there. Haven't gone over there since they come to this country. They feel much happier here.
Yeah, but
they were persecuted there.
We can't take everybody into this country, Fred. We can't take care of our own, but
I know that.
Sometimes people
those are good people that I'm referring to.
But it still appears like, Fred, that this is going to be a launching pad for President Clinton's re-election. It's been done in the past. Now, you're old enough, Fred, to remember December of 1941.
I am, and where President Roosevelt was the one who got us into that, who didn't accept at the White House, wouldn't accept the breaking of the code, the east winds, west winds, rain, and that was that we were going to be attacked. And Admiral Stark sent a telegram which lay in the basket overnight in Pearl Harbor there, and it was delivered during the raid, so that the men should have been advised ahead of time, and the ship's been out of there, but they didn't want that.
Okay.
Now, you won't find that in most of our history books either.
Well, I'm sure you won't. Well, Freddie, tonight's number, for those of you who would like to call in and air your opinions on any number of problems or issues that are affecting the Eau Claire area, the state of Wisconsin, our United States, or the world, just call this number, 839-6261, and we'll take them as they come. All right, Freddie, well, what do you got there tonight?
Well, I see the Pope says physicians must be formed by the gospel of life. That's Pope John Paul II.
So is he referring to the life abortion,
yes, about
anti-abortion?
abortion. That's about abortion. And he gave this talk on the 25th of November.
All right.
And this is from The Wanderer, the Catholic lay paper from from St. Paul.
Now that Wanderer, I think that was started back in, I saw a date on here once, Fred. This Wanderer's been around since 1867.
Right.
2 years after the Civil War that started.
Right.
There wasn't much going on over there in the cities back then for that, but
Yeah.
there was a paper starting up.
And you see where the Type A declaration says, population campaigns against the poor will not solve poverty.
Well, that's for sure, Fred. Well, anyway, what do you think about that, these attacks here the last few days on Newt Gingrich? You notice how things are shifting now away from Clinton and his problems in Bosnia, and they're shifting on to Newt here.
The media is going after, and possibly some of the things that he has done may deserve some scrutiny, but they're not talking about what went on in Whitewater, the crimes that were committed there, including the death of Mr. Foster.
Well, Freddie, this last week, D'Amato had his hearings, and they were getting so much stonewalling coming out of the White House. It just smacks of Watergate all over again. But anyway, they finally threw up their hands, the Democrats and the Republicans said, we're going to start subpoena. We're going to subpoena you people to get in here and tell the truth, and if you don't do it then, you'll be under trouble for not answering to these subpoenas. So that's the angle they're going at now because there's so much stonewalling going on.
They can jail them, too.
So now is the process of subpoenaing, Fred. Well, Freddie, we know for years the drug trafficking has been coming out of Colombia.
Now it's Mexico, and even a president of Mexico, the past president, is the one who was involved in it, or at least his staff was.
Well, that president was in power up till a year ago.
Right.
And now they're saying that upwards of $500 million was siphoned off in drug profits and stolen from the people of Mexico and funneled into banks all over the world, including the United States and Switzerland. Well, this former president, I think his name was Salinas, wasn't it?
Yes.
He helped push through that rotten deal called NAFTA.
Right.
He signed for Mexico, and I think it was Clinton signed for the United States. And
shortly after it was passed, the Mexican peso was devaluated.
Well, Fred, the latest what I've read now,
Devalued, I should say.
within the last 3 days, an article I've read is linking the Salinas government with the cocaine and the marijuana trafficking directly into Clinton's backyard in Arkansas. And there's possibility that Clinton and his cohorts were tied directly into the drug trafficking between Mexico and the United States. And that stuff got on the streets, and many young men and women have lost their lives through gang warfare and drug addiction and drug overdoses, car wrecks, what have you. But the news seems to be closing in on Clinton as a drug trafficker, by proxy, someone else doing the dirty work, but the money funneled back to him for re-election.
And you probably
and for election to president's first
heard
time.
on TV tonight where Salinas' sister-in-law tried to withdraw some of that money out of a Swiss bank.
And she was stifled.
Yeah.
And this Salinas has disappeared too. Some of his relatives have been murdered down there, but it looks like it's just creeping northward, this gang warfare and worldwide warfare and drug trafficking over this lucrative business, Fred, billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
On tonight's news, they said 300 tons of cocaine came into the United States last year. That's 600,000 pounds.
That's a lot of cocaine.
And there's a lot of bodies laying around that fought over that. And I still maintain, Fred, that the way to stop the trafficking is not on the street corner with a couple of kids selling a little vials full of cocaine. Because you dump that stuff in the ghetto where they've got no other way out, of course they're going to deal it. That's not where it needs to be stopped. It needs to be stopped at the highest levels of government within and without the United States, because those are the people that are getting involved in this. They're using that money for re-election campaigns to help and hinder their enemies and friends. I mean, this is getting into the highest levels of government, Fred.
Right.
It needs to be stopped.
Needs to be stopped is true.
Okay. I think we got a call here, Fred. At least I hope so. Is anybody out there?
Yeah, I wonder how that Newt Gingrich is going to do.
What do you mean?
I got a question regarding abortion.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering what the 8-ball sitting to your right thinks about it.
Oh, this side? Of abortion?
To your right there, 8-ball. The guy sitting next to you, the glasses on and the tie.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, what do you think about abortion?
Well, I think that's taking of a human life. We don't kill animals, but it's also possible under the Supreme Court's decision to kill the unborn babies. I'm very strongly opposed to that. I'm glad that my mother saw fit to bring me into the world.
You said we don't kill animals, but I just moved to Wisconsin, but isn't there something called deer hunting?
Yeah, well, that is getting rid of the surplus deer, I guess.
Oh. Kessler?
Yeah. Kessler, yeah.
Yeah, Geenberger.
Who?
Ed.
Okay.
Okay, Geenberger.
All right, okay. Well, Freddie,
Yes.
so what do you think they ought to do? You think they ought to start, who's going to arrest a president of a country like Mexico? Here he was up to his neck in the drug trafficking, and before him it was the leaders in Colombia and half a dozen other countries. Panama, you saw what happened in Noriega. He's sitting in a prison in Florida or whatever, federal prison. Cuba's been up, Castro's been dealing drugs for 20, 30 years down there, using that money to finance his revolutions in Central and South America. Jamaica, there's been people higher up in the government's arrested there, but what are you going to do if it comes down to President Clinton is proved to be dealing in drugs? What do you do, shoot him or what?
Well, I don't think he'll be shot, but I would like to see him come to trial. I think he is as guilty as anyone that has ever been involved.
Yeah, it doesn't look good there. You notice this mean Arkansas, they don't talk too much about it, but that's the linchpin to the whole thing.
I know, and the ironic part about it is the media has not been talking much about Whitewater.
Well, there's a few bodies over that mean Arkansas. A few people that were involved in the CIA and in drug running have been murdered, including a guy named Barry Seal, who was working for the intelligence communities.
I'd like to see that fellow that you interviewed on TV, Nichols, be brought and interviewed by the committees that are holding hearings on it.
When we interviewed him, I think it was back in August. At that point, Fred, he